We would like to talk about the situation of journalism in Russia. European Court for Human Rights has ruled in favor of three Russian journalists against the ruling of Russia courts. What's your stand on that? Is that decision important in any way, or is it just another so-called European decision that has no effect on Russia?
Well, I mean, I think there are a number of developments in Russia in recent months which give us a great deal of concern, and I think this European Court of Human Rights decision is among them. We've seen over the past few months more pressure on journalists and independent media, and there's a great deal of concern that in advance of the presidential elections that are due to take place in Russia next year, there's an increasing intolerance of dissent within society, and particularly within media. And I think it's reflected in this European Court of Human Rights decision. It shows that the courts in Russia do less to protect press freedom and free expression, and do more to protect the interests of people who already exercise a great deal of power. And I think that's extremely worrying.
Do you think the ruling of the European Court will have any effect on the situation of journalism in Russia?
Well, I mean, I certainly hope so. I mean, this ruling is very important. Here was a case of a number of journalists and a number of civil society leaders expressing publicly their concern about the lack of a regional government's capacity to deal with corruption. They were expressing real concern about the failure to tackle corruption in the region of Penza, and for their pains they were prosecuted under a law which frankly is just completely unacceptable in a modern democratic society. And the European Court of Human Rights has rightly said that this is unacceptable, and condemned the state of affairs in Russia where such a prosecution could take place. So it does have an important significance. We hope it will lead the Russian authorities and legislature to change the law to prevent any prosecution like this ever happening again. However, it must be said that we're not hopeful that that's likely to happen. The atmosphere in Russia for journalism and independent journalism these days is worse than it has been for many, many years. And many people fear that there's a return to the style of authoritarian and collectivized and centralized control of media that we saw during the days of the Soviet Union. Only in the last few days, the decision to remove the BBC from its right to broadcast in FM transmissions in Russia is a further worrying development. It seems that at this time, when Russia should be opening up itself to more debate, to more discussion about the future, the doors are closing, the windows are closing. There is a new atmosphere of intolerance of dissent, which is frankly very worrying indeed.
I just want to talk about the ruling of the European Court. Just one more thing. Does this have any legal effects? I mean, do the journalists in Russia must they be compensated?
Well, the decision of the court was that there should be at least €1,000 compensation for the defendants in this case. Which is not much, but it is recognition of their loss and of the fact that they should be compensated. I think more importantly, what this ruling should do is that it should say to the Russian government that if you wish to be a part of the European community of nations, of democratic states, then you have got to put your own house in order. And the fact of the matter is there should be no more prosecutions like this. The law should be changed clearly to provide stronger protection to journalists and for free expression for all citizens. And there has to be, at the highest level, a sea change in attitudes in order to change the culture of censorship and lack of transparency that exists in many regions in Russia. So it's very important, this case. Not only is it important for the individuals concerned, but it opens up important avenues for change which will have an impact on the rights of all Russian citizens, and particularly upon the rights of all journalists.
You mentioned the general situation in Russia isn't like we can't compare it to the situation in European Union. And could you say that the journalists in Russia are afraid to do their job?
Well, I mean, I don't think. I mean, I think one has to say that, put it in another way, and that is to say that there are many journalists in Russia today who are courageously doing their job despite all the problems that they face. Of course there's a problem of self-censorship. Of course there's a problem, particularly in the broadcasting sector, where there is no national independent broadcaster any longer in Russia. The main channels of media are in the hands of political and economic interests that are extremely powerful. So there is extremely difficult situation for media, and in those circumstances it's inevitable that there's going to be a degree of self-censorship. But many journalists are trying to fight back. The Russian Union of Journalists, which is a member organization of the IFJ, is strongly resisting this tendency towards more control of media, and we're supporting them as best we can.